All right. Good morning. Hello, hello,
Good
hello.
morning.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm the founder of Me Time Healing, and I have here with me Dr. Swati Chanani, who's a psychiatrist at Georgetown University Medical Center, and she's also part of Me Time Healing team as a supervisor. And we would like to talk about a serious topic today, but we're going to keep it little light and we're going to have fun talking about this very serious topic. And we hope that will be informative and will provide you with some lifetime learning tools that would improve your life, and you'll enjoy this session. Welcome, Dr. Chanani. Would you like to present yourself a little bit more than I did?
Of course, good morning, Fairy. Thank you so much for having me here. Like Fairy said, I'm a psychiatrist. I specialize in working with adolescents and young adults. Currently, I see mostly patients on an outpatient basis at Georgetown here in Washington, D.C., but also do a lot of work with Me Time, which I really enjoy. And yeah, really, excited to be here to talk about this topic. I think it's very important, especially for our young adults who are just entering the workforce. So yeah.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, our subject today is seasonal affective disorder, and my question is, let's first dig in and understand what is SAD, and what are the symptoms, and what should we look for? What are the signs that could arise and kind of affect our daily routine?
Yeah. And, I think this is such an important topic this time of year, right? It's starting to get cold. The days are starting to get shorter. We're starting to see less sunlight. And these are all things that are kind of triggers for seasonal affective disorder. Um, so seasonal affective disorder is where you have seasonal changes in mood. And most often we think of it as starting in the winter time, or, when it starts to get colder and there's less light. Um, and folks who experience this will actually have full blown symptoms of depression during these times. So, really persistent low mood or irritability, social withdrawal, not enjoying the things that they normally enjoy. So, not taking pleasure in their normal hobbies and activities, changes in sleep, usually often increased sleep. So, sleeping a lot at night, even sleeping during the day, and then still feeling tired. So, having low energy despite getting enough sleep. We often see changes in appetite, often increased appetite. And but it can go either way. Change,
Increase appetite towards junk food or increase appetite in general?
increase appetite in general. Although that's a very good point, because often people, when they're feeling sad, they might gravitate towards junk food because they think it will comfort them, right? Like you're feeling down and you're like, well, maybe it will comfort me to, like, have a little extra dessert. And it's also the holidays, a lot of that food is available. But obviously it doesn't comfort them. So
Yeah.
so yeah, very good question.
So are
Other
there
things.
different forms of SAD depending on the season?
There are, right? So while we normally talk about, SAD in terms of coming on in the wintertime, it can actually, for some folks, have a summertime onset. So where they seem fine most of the year, and then for whatever reason, the summertime is really hard. And often with those folks, we'll actually see kind of like less sleep, harder time sleeping, kind of decreased appetite, and maybe more irritability than just sadness. So yeah, very good point.
So how is SAD different from general, our, typical winter blues?
Yeah.
How are these two differentiate?
Yeah, and they're different, right? So it's very common for people to get, sometimes a little down when it hits winter, right? It's just colder, you can't go outside as much, you often are not engaging in as many like pleasurable activities. But when we talk about seasonal affective disorder, you're really like meeting criteria for depression, right? So you are really like persistently sad. It's lasting all day, every day for weeks on end. You really are starting to see impacts in terms of like your work or your personal life because you're just not as engaged. You really can't focus, you really can't concentrate. So it's about the severity of what you're feeling and it being more persistent.
It's a longer lasting
Yeah.
effect. Now, how common is a seasonal affective disorder in United States?
Yeah, so in the US, it's pretty common. There's estimates that say in the general population, it's about 3%. And for people who have depressions, who have a history of depression, it's as high as 15%. So pretty high, pretty significant number of people experience this. And those numbers are probably underestimates because there's a lot of people that experience this that think this is just normal as part of like the seasonal changes and don't actually report it or seek help. So.
So, what is the demographic you see in your office? Who kind of comes in and talks about SAD and kind of open up?
Yeah, and I think this is becoming, when we think of SAD, it's definitely starts to kind of come about late teens, early 20s. And
Mhm.
I do see more of like the folks in like kind of their mid 20s talking about this because they've now experienced this maybe for a few years. And so they're seeing a pattern, right? Like they maybe the first time it happened, they, just attributed it to whatever. And now they're like, wait, every year around this time, I'm getting depressed, right? So it's kind of usually I see a lot of people in their mid 20s kind of start to bring this up and start to notice this. There is also data that this is a little more common in women. We're not sure why. And I do kind of see that in my clinical practice as well. This is a little more common in women.
Quickly, because we women are more open and empathetic, and we don't
Yeah.
down with stigma, and we kind of want to talk
Yeah.
and put it out there. And men
Yeah.
are more reserved and more, they have a different approach. So uh, let's welcome all of them and say, "Hey, here we are. Come to Me Time Healing, and take advantage of these lifestyle tools that we have, and get control of your life, get
Yeah.
control of your journey to feel better." Now, how can SAD be diagnosed? Let's talk a little bit medical.
Yeah, and so in terms of, a medical diagnosis, this can be diagnosed by a primary care doctor. So, just your general practitioner can also be diagnosed by a psychiatrist, by a therapist. And what they're going to do is they're going to look for, they're going to do an interview, they're going to talk to you, ask you about the symptoms you're having, and see if there's seasonality to this, right? So is this happening
Mm.
consistently in the wintertime or in the summertime, and then most of the rest of the year it seems fine? And is it like a very, I mean, I just saw someone last week, very clear, like it just started getting cold in the DC area, and she's like, this is exactly when it happened, right? Like this is exactly when my symptoms started, just as it started getting cold, just as it started raining, or we've had a lot of rain in the US with the hurricanes. And
Yes.
so you want to know, you need to kind of notice that association.
Climate crisis a couple of months ago, and here
Yeah.
we are, climate crisis hitting the
Yep.
roof.
Yep. Yep.
So
Exactly.
yeah, there will be ramifications, and there
Yeah.
will be a lot of uh, people, I'm thinking, affected by this in the months to come.
Yeah.
uh, and we send them our love and our prayers.
Yeah.
Now, what kind of therapies are out there that people can take advantage? What kind of mindfulness resources people can tap into if they
Yeah.
don't feel like sitting one on one with a therapist? What can they do to find coping mechanisms and, uh, you know, uh, throughout these months?
Yeah, and so I think there's a few things I kind of want to highlight, and like you're saying, part of this is lifestyle, right? I think this is one thing, is a big part of mental health. I know at Me Time we've really promoted this. Um, get outside, even if it's cold. This is about the light, right? So there's a lot of science that something with seasonal affective disorder is about how your eyes are actually processing light and getting exposed to light. So get outside if there is sunlight, even if it's cold, just bundle up, get outside, and then be active, right? Exercise is really important. Exercise promotes mindfulness. It promotes your ability to stay in the present and kind of keep your mind free of you know, a lot of anxiety. Yeah, and there's, yeah, a lot of clutter, right? And there's good ways to exercise indoors as well. So exercise is really important. Um, and then, engaging, proactively engaging with your friends and family, right? People are busy this time of year. It's
Yeah.
holidays. Sometimes that can be stressful,
Yeah.
but social engagement is so, so important. And
Mhm.
then, I like, talking with a therapist isn't always just about treatment. It can be very preventative. I think our therapists at Me Time are really skilled at just promoting well-being. And so if you are plugged in with a therapist or want to get plugged in with a therapist, it can be preventative. It doesn't just have to be reactive. And so I would really encourage that, especially for,
It's more of a like a long term, because
yeah,
short term you can go out, you can pet your dog, you can,
yep,
your best friend. These
yeah,
are short term solutions, but there's also long term solutions out there that can improve your life
yeah,
and, and feel better eventually.
yeah.
So what other long term solutions would you recommend for listeners?
Yeah, one thing I always like to talk about is light box therapy, which sounds very, very, kind of fancy, but it's actually very easy to carry out.
Mhm.
You get a light. It has to be, a certain level of brightness. We say 10,000 lux, LUX. That's how these things are measured. And you have it kind of shine directly on your face for 20 to 30 minutes a day. And if
Mhm.
you start doing this in like September, October, right, if you have kind of a winter onset for these things, this is very, very preventative. So I know people who, like, after they've experienced, one or two kind of seasons of like these seasonal changes in mood, they just do this every year, kind of starting in September, October, do it while you're working, just at your desk. And this is kind of, very preventative actually for kind of changes
Would
in
that
mood.
help winter blues too?
It would. So even if you're not like having, full-blown seasonal affective disorder, just with the winter blues, this can
Mhm.
help a lot, right? And if you're thinking about, like our young folks, they're going into offices. Often these office buildings are huge and beautiful, but not necessarily have a lot of natural light. Just
Yeah.
have this in your cubicle, have this at your desk. It's very preventative.
Are there any long-term risks? Because some people, like I'm a cancer survivor, some
Yeah.
people have some past, history that might not be good for them. So can they use this long-term, like every day?
They can, they need to make sure there's a light that doesn't have ultraviolet light, right? So the ultraviolet rays are really what we think of as being kind of toxic. And so you want to get a light that doesn't have UV light. But if you look up these lights, light box therapy, that's how
Mm.
they're designed, is to not have UV light. And these things are not expensive, right? You can get them online for relatively reasonable.
Okay. And I'm assuming there are probably some YouTube videos that shows how you can kind of position it and how you can use it and make the best out of it. You don't want them like right up your face, right?
Yeah, like you don't want it like, in your way, but it should be kind of touching your face. And we say, about a foot and a half to 2 feet from you.
You
But
want to
they,
feel the warmth of it. Is it
yeah,
warm? Okay.
they're not, they shouldn't be emitting too much heat, right? That would be kind of a sign of like a not great light quality. So they shouldn't be emitting too much heat, but you want to notice it. But yeah, there's definitely guides online on like how to position it and what to do. But it's a really good kind of preventative solution, especially if you're not in a situation where you'll get a lot of natural light.
Thank you so much for that. I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to get one.
Yeah.
So let's talk about cognitive behavior therapy and
Yes.
how could CBT help with the symptoms of affective disorder, and how kind of a long-term effect would that have on a person who wants to, who's dedicated
Yeah.
to feel good and have a good life and enjoy every season, not just summer and spring.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that, Ferry, because I'm a huge fan of cognitive behavioral therapy. Right, so the core of CBT is people examine their thoughts, their feelings, and their actions and how they're all linked. And they realize how if by changing their thoughts and their actions, how they can change their emotions, right? How that plays into something like seasonal affective disorder, you really focus on the action step of that. If I engage in behavioral activation, for example, which I'll go into a little more detail on, it will likely make me feel happier, which will likely help me kind of work on some of these like negative thoughts that I'm having. All right, often with seasonal affective disorder, you get thought in these thoughts of like, there's just no point in going outside. It's so miserable. The world is so miserable. You can kind of help change some of those thoughts just by
Mhm.
changing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Um, and also, right, like a skilled CBT therapist will help you figure out how to change those thoughts as well, kind of talk back to yourself, address those thoughts, and that will help also change your feelings and your actions. And I kind
A
of
lot of this is, a lot of this is behavioral, not
yes.
hormonal, or not depending on your body showing
Yep.
reaction. Most of this is a, behavioral activity, correct?
Correct, correct, right? And when we say, behavioral activation, it does include exercise, but it's not just exercise, right? The concept of behavioral activation is if you are doing something that is going to trigger a positive response in your brain, right? And that can be like reading, that can be going out with friends, that can be cooking. It's something that you enjoy. Like,
Playing instruments,
yeah, yeah,
my
it's just doing
favorite,
something.
singing,
Yeah.
dancing. There are now dancing, therapies that I hear, and I'm so excited about this new chapter because, there's art therapy, there's dance therapy, there's so many preventive measures out there that people
Yeah.
can tap into, and it just excites me because 10, 20 years ago, nobody talked about these topics.
Yeah.
It's becoming more, mainstream, and people are taking advantage of it, and they're talking about it more and more. It's an exciting era.
It really is. It's a very exciting era. And I agree. It's like, maybe sitting talking one-on-one to a therapist isn't for everyone. So we've got all these other things, and all of these things are evidence-based, right? Dance therapy, yoga, art therapy. There's evidence behind all of these that say these improve mood, these improve anxiety. It's so exciting. Yeah.
So, how would you, since you're a psychiatrist and you
Mhm.
prescribe medication, how would you define the difference that, oh, this person uh, would 100% take advantage of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
However, this other person is very past beyond that. This person really needs, some form of medication to get back on track. How do you define the difference? Um I'm sure you have all of those sensitivity chips,
Yeah.
and you have a science-based, model, but what triggers, what differences do you kind of see and immediately go, oh, you know what, this is beyond prevention,
Yeah.
with these, preventive tools, we need to kind of tap into a different resource.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I will say, I always recommend therapy, right? Even if someone's going to need medication, we know study after study, medications work better when someone is in therapy and when someone is engaging in these lifestyle modifications. They actually boost how the medications work. So I almost never say it's okay to just take medication without these things, right? These are essential parts of treatment. To me, when I start thinking about medication, is kind of, you know there has to be a certain level of severity of functional impairment, right? If you're at the point where you're missing work or you're really significantly losing productivity at work and it's starting to affect your performance, it's really starting to affect your relationship in some way where you just cannot engage with your partner. Or if you have kids, you cannot engage with your kids. Um, or if we're starting to see suicidal thoughts, right? And that's, a very serious thing to bring up. Um,
And it's
very,
more and more, we are hearing more and more and more, or it's being talked
yeah,
freely more and more.
yeah,
Before, people would not talk about it, and there was a huge stigma of
Yeah.
shutting down and brushing it under the carpet. Now people really talk about it, and
Yeah.
it has become more, mainstream, unfortunately, especially after the pandemic.
Yeah, and it's like you said, we are seeing it more, which is very sad. But the stigma around it has gone down a lot. And so at least people are willing to talk about it. One of the biggest ways to prevent suicide is to get treatment, right? Is to talk about it, get treatment. Often when we see completed suicides, it's with people who weren't in treatment, right? And so if someone's starting to have those thoughts, to me, I think that's the time we got to start medication and get those under control. So,
Yeah. Uh, I want to talk a little bit about loneliness also, if
hmm
you don't mind, because when you're lonely, these feelings kind of hit you harder,
yep,
right?
yeah,
And it could be deeper, right? Much deeper when you don't have the effects of it
hmm
can be deeper when you don't have anyone to talk to, a
hmm
partner, a husband, a wife, a daughter, a sister. So, what would you recommend to those who are lonely,
yeah,
don't
and
have
I
anyone to open their hearts to?
yeah, and I think this is, unfortunately, a growing trend with our young adults, right? Either kind of their perception of their social support or just their social support is a lot more limited, and people are a lot more isolated and do feel lonely. Um, I think if you're in that position, there's a few things I would recommend, right? So talking with a therapist is a great source of support, right? Even if you're like, I feel lonely, but I'm not depressed, but that's okay. A therapist can be really helpful and just talking through these thoughts, helping address them, and then helping you brainstorm what to do. Um, there's a lot of ways to build community and build support, but it's hard. It's harder than it used to be because I think people are so engrossed in social media and their phones and technology that they've forgotten some of like the importance, the benefit of like the person to person.
Yeah.
But I tell a lot of my young patients who are feeling this way, like join a club. Like all major cities in the US have these things where they have like, you know, kickboxing club or dart leagues or all these things, right? It's like you don't have to like love the activity. Go there, go meet people your age. You might hit it off with someone and you will start to develop friends and a sense of community. And that is so important.
I also want to kind of highlight something. Being in the nature and living that energy is good, but
Yeah.
also we humans need human energy,
Yeah.
right? And when you're isolated you're stuck in one room, you work from your home office, or you, as a student, you study in your room and you don't really
Yeah.
leave, just go attend classes and come back. So, in these cases, would you recommend that they make it a routine to go to the gym or go to a music class or an art class or a book club and actually in person attend and enjoy other people's energy?
Yeah, 100%. And if you make it a routine, right, it's going to be so much better. Or if like an art class, if you like sign up for it in advance, you pay for it in advance, you're more likely to go because you've already done some investment, right? So do these things preventatively. And I know a lot of like, colleges, they're doing a lot more stuff in person. Go to class in person when you can, right? Like even if there's a virtual or hybrid option, go in person. If you're, working, I mean, a lot of companies now are pushing more, return to office. Um, Go to the office a few days a week, meet your colleagues in person. Like you'll have just natural conversations. It will boost your energy, even though like, yes, it might be more comfortable to like, stay at home, but like push yourself. You'll enjoy the social interaction.
I also want to talk about, we talked about loneliness, but I also want to talk about expat life,
Yes.
immigrants who come, to this country or any country. There are 480 million immigrants worldwide,
Yeah.
45 plus million uh, live in United States.
Yeah.
And they already have lots of challenges. Most of them have 2 3 jobs. They're burned out. They survive uh, the lifestyle they have picked. They want to be successful, so there's a lot of pressure on them.
Yeah.
So would you say expats would have a stronger effect of that?
I think that's a really good question. And when we talk about immigration and then acculturation, these are very stressful processes, right? And then there's much, I think, often puts a lot of stress on you, and it can definitely trigger things like depression and anxiety. And because you're in a new country and a new environment, you often don't know how to seek help, or you feel stigmatized about it, or you're worried it's going to affect your prospects in this country and your success, right, in your new home. And so, yeah, I think they are often definitely more prone to seasonal changes because they're in like a new place with a new weather pattern, right? We have a lot of immigrants come to the U.S. from places where they've never like seen snow, right? They've never experienced temperatures this cold, right? Not that the U.S. is a super cold place, but we do get cold. It does snow.
For full 4 seasons, yes.
Yeah, yeah, right. And so they don't, they're really like they don't know how to deal with those changes. They don't know how to dress with for them. And so they just then often do kind of, withdraw more, stay inside more because they just don't even know what to do. They don't know how to drive in the snow, right? Um, so yeah, I think they're, in general, there's kind of a higher risk for things like depression and anxiety, but then yes, particularly for like kind of like these seasonal and weather related changes.
So would you say that for them to talk to somebody that understands their culture, understands where they're coming from, or who has also gone through similar expat experiences, would be beneficial for these people to talk to and kind of learn those lifestyle skills, build those toolboxes that take advantage of those toolboxes that are out there, especially at Me Time Healing. We have a comprehensive approach to wellness, so we have multilingual providers who are also, some of them, expats and have gone through those ups and downs in life. So would you say that would be beneficial for expats that live in United States?
100%, right? Speaking with a therapist who has gone through some of the same experiences as you, they're going to relate to you more, right? They're going to you won't have to, I mean, all therapists should be empathetic and should be able to see your perspective. But if someone's gone through the same thing as you, has the same culture as you don't have to explain yourself as much, right? You don't have to explain that stuff. You can just start on the actual therapy. You don't have to like do all this explaining and setting up and, let me explain my culture. And that is one of the things that I think really sets Me Time apart is we have a lot of providers that, speak multiple languages, have had the experience of moving. So both for, like people who grew up in the US and then have moved abroad, and then also for people who have come in, immigrated into the US, I think they have a high chance of finding someone who's a good match, right? And a, like fit is really important in therapy, and I think there's a good chance that they might find someone who can relate to them, relate to their experiences.
That immediate connection is so important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, these are all my questions. Uh, you're now off the hot seat, doctor. So before we wrap up, I want to open our live stream to questions. And if you don't want to come on and ask questions, you can just type it and we'll see it. And if you don't feel like contributing now, you can always email me at perrynasta@gmail.com, and I would, get you in touch with Dr. Chanani, and we'll get some answers for you and connect you with the right resources. So, is there anything else you would like to add, Doctor?
No, again, I mean, I'm just happy to be here to talk about this. I think we're kind of the perfect season to start thinking about this and preventing this. So, yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, really open to any questions that people have.
Thank you, thank you. So here we are. We're opening our live stream to questions. And everyone is feeling shy today. Alrighty. Well, we will wrap our session today, and I would like to thank you, Dr. Chanani, for joining us today at Me Time Business live stream on LinkedIn. And please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or email me if you have any questions, and we can take our conversation offline. And again, thank you, Doctor, for joining us today with your wisdom, with your science-backed knowledge, and being a part of our community. I truly appreciate your partnership.
Yeah, I appreciate it as well, Ferry. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to everyone who logged on and listened.
Have a wonderful day, Doctor.
Bye.